So good evening. We'll get started right on time. Just a reminder, the 15th summer of this Healthy Living lecture series. I'm Mike Powers. I'll be introducing Dr. Kerr here in a moment. And just a reminder, Michelle Bartlett has put together a heck of a season, as she does every year, 15 years in this particular session. We deal with health issues. However, tomorrow night, as part of Discover Alaska's series of talks, Jessica Black, Associate Chancellor for Rural and Community and Native Education, will be presenting on indigenizing and decolonizing research. Thursday night, Music in the Garden, Diamond Fuller, who's fabulous, by the way, at 6 p.m. and Fairbanks Community Jazz Band at 7:30. Bring a lawn chair. Monday, this is a great one, August 11th, in the Scheibel Auditorium. Dermot Cole will be talking with Dan O'Neill about Dan's latest book, The Impertinent Question, The Words and Adventures of a Liberal Columnist at a Conservative Newspaper in the Red State of Alaska. So that's 40 years of his columns. This will be good. I was talking to John Davies, who had read the book, and said it's really fabulous. 1 week from tonight, in this particular last presentation of Healthy Living, Professor Arga Das, Assistant Professor of Computer Science, speaking on AI and health. AI for healthcare in Alaska, where are we and where are we headed? So that would be a fascinating talk. Lots of great talks, presentation, music continues. So with that, let me introduce tonight's speaker, Dr. Stewart Kerr, board-certified, fellowship-trained orthopedic surgeon specializing in both comprehensive spine surgery and orthopedic fracture, trauma reconstruction, has completed Thomas Jefferson University Hospital's Rothman Orthopedic Institute's Combined Neurosurgery Orthopedic Spine Surgery Fellowship in Philadelphia. In addition to key clinical and leadership positions over the course of his career, has served as director of the Portsmouth Comprehensive Spine Service Naval Medical Center in Portsmouth, Virginia. Dr. Kerr also deployed as an orthopedic staff trauma surgeon as part of the Joint Special Operations Task Force in Afghanistan. From 86 to 1990, served as a hospital corpsman, SEAL Team 2, as part of Naval Amphibious Base in Mill Creek, Virginia. And tonight's presentation is entitled The 30-Minute Health Transformation Tips and Benefits for a Daily Exercise Routine. So please welcome Dr. Kerr. One last comment. We did have a one-page handout for the refrigerator. Didn't make it. On your survey sheets, if you just indicate your email address, we'll get it to you.
Well, good evening, everybody, and what an amazing summer we're having. It's just absolutely gorgeous up here. What I'd like to talk about tonight is really looking at the benefits of regular, low-impact exercise activities. And I even want to talk a little bit about sauna and the utilization for sauna as an augment to your health routine. I currently serve as the medical director at Foundation Health for the Orthopedic and Spinal Surgery Clinic, and I'm really enjoying myself up here. We see a huge variety of things, and it's really nice to be able to be engaged in the community, and I appreciate the invite tonight for this. So the benefits of exercise is really what this talk is about. And when we're kids, we really didn't think a lot about getting out and playing and doing things. It was, for many of us, it was just part of our daily activities. When we weren't at school, we were oftentimes playing. We were doing things that really set the stage for a very healthy life for many of us. But oftentimes, people tend to fall off of some of those activities. And I want to just kind of look at the benefits of this. So when we look at activities, even low impact exercise has profound health benefits. And what I mean by low impact, this is like looking at the movements such as walking, swimming, yoga, stretching, all these things that aren't necessarily like this fella at the gym that's, cranking who knows how much weight on that dumbbell. But you don't, the point of this talk is that you don't really need to, do things that are not sustainable. This may be sustainable for this individual, but I'd probably beg to question whether that would be sustainable for the majority of people in here, me included. So when we look at the very specific subtitles or the topics of what low intensity exercise can do for us, it really is very effective at protecting joints and lowering injury risk just by being more active. When we look at swimming for a lot of individuals, I'll recommend a swim routine for them. Even if they're not good swimmers, oftentimes people can get into the pool with a kickboard and burn calories and get good exercise and good muscle resistance from the water. Exercise also is really effective at decreasing the pain from arthritis. There's a couple of good studies that looked at this, one as recent as 2015, where it was shown to reduce the pain that's associated with arthritis by, basically up to 20% in a lot of individuals. We all know that exercise can be very good for our cardiovascular system. It elevates the heart rate safely when we're looking at lower impact exercise, and it also lowers our hypertension risk. What I found interesting from this study is that just walking 30 minutes a day, that could be done through parking maybe way out in the Costco parking lot, making those conscious decisions to where you're not trying to always find the spot that's right next to the entrance level, but really making deliberate choices. If we walk for 30 minutes a day, and it doesn't have to be 30 minutes at one pop, it lowers your coronary heart disease risk by 20%. That's better than a lot of medications that are out there by a long stretch. And it doesn't take a lot of equipment to do it. We also can look at low impact exercise for things that are really inexpensive, such as these bands. I was looking at Amazon, and you could buy a set of these bands for like $22 or something like that. So it's not something that requires this huge array of a gym. It can just be some simple things where you can get creative and look at the little handouts on that and do some resistance training to improve both your muscle mass, and it also is very effective at trying to maintain your bone density at a higher level. When we exercise, it burns calories, and it does it in a sustainable fashion. So when you walk, you burn between 140 and 200 kilocalories in that 30 minutes that you do. So all these things collectively add up, and they're really good health strategies for us all to engage in. What's interesting is my oldest son spent time in China. He did a study abroad during his MBA program at the University of Washington. And he was in Shanghai, and he said that every evening, everybody, unless they were really ill, almost everybody was out at the park, and that was just part of their culture. And so there was a lot of people that were doing Tai Chi, there were people that were doing all these different types of, very active, but low intensity activities, and that was just part of their culture. We haven't really necessarily embraced that in the United States, but I sure wish we would, because I think it would cut down on a lot of fall risk, and it would certainly, get people out there and getting to become more active with training their balance. This stuff doesn't just happen on its own. You have to kind of engage, and you have to keep developing these core strategies. We all know that there's a lot of depression in the United States, unfortunately, but a big part of that is that we have some very good strategies by getting out and becoming more active. And what that has been shown to do is reduce your depression risk by 30%, so almost a third. And when we do exercise, even if it's just low intensity stuff, it's going to lower your stress. It'll help your sleep at night typically when you look at the studies of this. And it also will boost your mood, and that tends to lead to other things that tend to be healthy for you oftentimes. The key thing with this is that the low intensity exercise, the stuff that can make a difference, it's safe for almost all of us. So adults, if someone that's a woman that's carrying a child, chronic conditions. And what we find is that if we look at some of these lower impact exercise activities, people tend to stick with them easier because it's not something that they're dreading to go out there and go for an 8-mile high intensity kind of circuit run sort of thing. It's not that you couldn't do that also, but there's a lot of gain in just some of these really simple measures that I'm advocating for. So the key takeaway from this is that low impact exercise is accessible. It doesn't require a lot of equipment. It's sustainable if you stick with it. It does help support your physical and mental well-being. And the key thing with this is consistency. And what I've always tried to advocate with a lot of my patients is try to have a kind of a playtime mindset. So there was for me, I could catch an Uber here because I don't have a car up here yet. I walk everywhere deliberately, and I ride this bicycle places, and so that's a conscious decision that I want to make because I know that as I'm getting older, I want to stay active, and I want to have all the benefits from these simple little things that we can all do that can make a really big impact on my ability to help provide care for people and stay active and stay on my game. So let's look, I'm going to segue a little bit before I open things up for questions, and looking at the science of regular sauna use. So when I was back in the Navy, I spent time in an Arctic warfare SEAL platoon. And one of the things that we always really liked doing when we were up in northern Norway, we'd have these really intense workouts, but there was a core group of us that really liked, after the workout, long run, long ski, lift, whatever it happened to be, we really liked going into the sauna and doing a few cycles in there. Really hot, as much as you could tolerate it, and then into a cold shower, or they had a little plunge pool. And this was before this thing at least became a thing in the United States or in the media. It was obviously pretty popular in Scandinavia. But I always can recall how calm and exhilarating I felt when I was done with those workouts, especially when I did the sauna afterwards. And I was really happy when they opened the sauna on the base because I'm retired military and I can go over there and utilize that. But sauna is something that I know that there's a few of those, like at the Alaska Club. That's something that I'd like to, hopefully through this talk, encourage you to look into that because it can be really helpful. So when we look at sauna, it's basically a short-term heat exposure. And it's been shown to be linked to a lot of cardiovascular, mental, and longevity benefits. The cardiovascular benefits of using sauna is that it raises your heart rate, it dilates your blood vessels, and it lowers your blood pressure. What was interesting in this study is that for sauna users that were regular with this, 4 to 7 times a week, it was linked to a 50% lower risk of fatal cardiovascular events. I can tell you that there's not a medication out there that does that. This is potent stuff that really works for you. In a similar fashion to the standard exercising, the low intensity exercise, it also activates relaxation, lowers your stress levels, specifically lowers your cortisol, which is a stress steroid that we have. It may reduce fatigue and mild depression. And there was an article in psychosomatic medicine where it was shown to also boost mood, decrease depression. There's a bit of hype out there on the detoxification effects of sauna use, and this really, most of our detoxification that we have within our system occurs in our renal system and in our hepatic system, in our liver. So the sweating, the effect of sweating for really detoxing is pretty negligible. When we look at the Finnish studies, frequent sauna, again, we talked about lowering your cardiovascular death by half. And then it also lowers your dementia risk and all-cause mortality. So it's a really simple intervention that can be really helpful for us as we age. The key thing with this is that this is something to probably add to some of the other activities that you do. Sauna isn't a substitute for exercise, but it can be something that augments what you're hopefully doing. And again with this, some of the mechanisms are that you have heat stress proteins that are activated, when you're in a hot, dry room like this. You have nitric oxide that's released, and it improves your overall circulation. It's also been shown to decrease your overall inflammation within your system, and there's a couple of studies that look at how effective your insulin sensitivity is. That's the hormone that we oftentimes see being dysregulated for people that end up with type 2 diabetes. And again, sauna use is safe for the majority of people. The key thing is that you need to hydrate well and start slow. Like any other type of exercise program, you can start slow and build up to that as you work to stay in the sauna for a longer period of time. So the key takeaway again from this is that regular sauna use complements hopefully these already healthy habits that we're doing. It's linked to better heart health, stress relief, and longevity, but again, it's not a substitute for exercise. Like for example, you're not going to do a lot for your bone density by sitting on one of the shelves in sauna. You have to get out and exercise. In a likewise fashion, it's not going to build muscle mass by sitting in a sauna, but these are some things that can augment the things that you're doing to potentially help with your recovery. So this is a pretty simple talk. There's references, and what we'll do is I apologize that those handouts didn't make it here. I rode my bike and I thought someone was going to get them to you, but I have that on we can send that out via email and make sure that we have that.
I think I have an e-copy.
Yeah.
Could you pop that on the screen? I may have let me see.
So these are my summary slides. Motion is really crucial for good, healthy living. Consistency is key. So if I'm going out and I'm exercising really, really intensely, but then I don't get at it again for 10 days because I'm sore and I'm exhausted and it beats me down, well, that's not as good as if I'm going out and doing a little something every day. And then I would say that, one of the big tasks that I have volunteered my life to go into, as has Dr. Keller, is to keep people active. So a big part of what I do, especially on an elective perspective, is if someone has a very difficult time walking because their leg gets numb and wobbly and weak, well, then I'm thinking, well, maybe they have spinal stenosis. So we investigate that. If they can't maintain their health, maybe it's hip arthritis, knee arthritis, shoulder arthritis. There's all sorts of different conditions that can, really interfere with someone's ability to stay active and to maintain their health. And when something that's correctable gets in the way of that, that's when we, really want to, do a deep dive into this and figure out what specifically is impeding an individual's ability to get out and even do this light exercise that we know is so important to your overall health. So this is our appointment line number here, and I know that that's on that handout too. And what I'll finish with before I open it up for questions is, skin knees aren't just for kids. So find your play, okay? I was trying to think of a good quote, and I think that for me that's kind of like, something that I always want to, like, I've got some skinned up knees right now because I was riding my fat bike and I, kind of rode it through an area where I crashed a little bit. No big deal. Get up, play. So find your play. It doesn't have to be a bike. It doesn't have to be something that's really high intense. But if you can associate your activity with something that, I get to go play. I get to go hike. I get to go walk. I get to go kayaking. Whatever that happens to be. Finding that joy that you had as a kid is going to help you stick with it. And those little things that you do every single day really do add up to make a really big difference, not only in our mental health and our well-being, but in how our bones respond to that, how our muscles respond to that, how our balance responds to that, all these things that can really help us stay active and healthy as we age. So with that, I will open it up for questions, and I appreciate your attention. There you go. Yes, sir.
More of a statement than a question. I'm still using barbells and dumbbells, and I consider them pretty crucial and not impactful.
I would agree with you. I think that any type of resistance training is good as we age, and But my point in showing you the resistance band stuff is that you don't, resistance band, I can toss those into a little rucksack that I can take on the plane with me wherever I travel, that kind of stuff. So sometimes it's a little bit easier, but it's not that one is necessarily better than the other. It's just resistance is resistance. And as we age, our muscle tone does tend to need some help. And that's why it's important to exercise our muscles with resistance training, and it also helps with our slowing our bone loss, which is age-related as well. Yes?
I have a couple of questions. When you say start slow, particularly with sauna, what do you mean by start slow? Give me an idea when you're saying start slow. Does that mean start at 30 minutes?
Well,
start at 1 minute? Or
if someone's not a regular sauna user and that sauna is 180 degrees Fahrenheit, it may be hard to stay in there for 12, 15 minutes. You may find that, wow, I'm gassed being in there for 8 minutes. So you don't have to, push yourself so hard to where you feel like you're blowing up. What I find is that when I use a sauna, your body will adapt to that heat. So with time, I can stay in there, maybe the first go around, I might be able to stay in there for maybe close to an hour. And then I'll get out and I'll take a cold shower and I'll cool down. And then that second and third time that I cycle through, I've already taken on a lot of heat. So it's hard to bring my baseline temperature back down to where it was when I initially went in there. But if it's been a little while since I've used a sauna, I can't stay in there for anywhere close to an hour. It might be 15, 17 minutes. Maybe if I was out doing something kind of intense and I didn't hydrate as well as I should have the day before or for a couple of days in a row, then I'm going to probably not be able to stay in there as long because I'm already a little low on my fluids.
And the second question is kind of a different question. You're talking about motion, how important motion was. But what would you say the ratio is between motion and being sedentary should be for a person? Say like our ages?
Well, I think that when we look at these studies, I mean, a half an hour of just walking, made a big difference. So I don't think that you need to be out there, exercising for half of your waking hours. I think that you can do a little bit of something, maybe once or twice a day, and I think the key thing is to make it fun. Really. If you make it fun, the likelihood of you saying, wow, that was a great bike ride that I had with my wife. Let's do that again tomorrow. So I think the key thing is that you should, aim for that 30 minutes and just try to do that. And if there's a special place that you are or a special day and you want to add more on top of it, that's great. But I don't want, a lot of people, I think, they just throw their hands up because they're like, well, I don't have 2 hours a day to go and exercise. Well, my point is that you don't need that. Just a little bit makes a big difference. I caught a flight. I was down visiting my sons in Seattle this weekend. I flew up today, and so I had, like a little 35-minute delay to get on that airplane. And a lot of my day, I'm either up and down examining patients in the clinic, or I'm standing in one pretty much small spot when I'm working on somebody. And so an area that I know that I have to spend more time on is stretching. So I had this little 30-minute thing. I just kind of took myself off to the side in the airport, and I'm going to use that 30 minutes, and I'm going to just, stretch out and kind of pay attention to those areas that I know might tend to get tight. So you can sneak little pockets of things in here, and all of that stuff is really, really important. It's one of the things, that I sometimes will have patients that maybe have sustained a hip fracture or an ankle fracture, and I know that we've got to get them back to the point where they're walking and they're really as stable on one leg as the other one. So I'll oftentimes have them, when they're brushing their teeth, I'll say, hey, look, I want you to just, stand on that leg while you're brushing your teeth, or maybe when you're making coffee, and fire all those little brain to nerve to muscle junctions so that, even as I'm standing here, those are firing. It's not something that's static. So those little things where you kind of push yourself, just little mini episodes, really do add up. And I think that they're an important part of what I'm going to do as I continue to age, because if I don't do that stuff, I pay for it.
And
Yes.
You talked about the sauna. Were you mostly looking at dry saunas then, and not, like a wet sauna? Or
I
what
think
we call sweat
I think heat is heat. Realistically, I like the dry sauna, and I wasn't able to tease out like a lot of papers that looked at wet sauna versus dry sauna, because most of the sauna literature is classic dry sauna. But there's benefits to steam rooms and all that kind of stuff too. I just went with the classic, literature and papers on that. Yes, sir.
Hi there. I really appreciate what you're saying. Let me add something to it. I've asked this before and I've never gotten a good answer. I travel more than most people. So in the last 60 years, more than 30 trips out of the country, averaging 4 to 5 months each. Most of them to Peru, and I started returning to Italy. So when I was a kid, it didn't matter. When you're a kid, you can grow into a head. But in the last 50 years, or maybe 40 years, and I noticed it then, I worked out of the laborers for 26 years up north. Shoveling 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, no problem. The problem was I show up in Peru like a beached whale, and then eating like a pig, or going to Italy now and eating far more in Italy than I do now. The weight falls away. People say, oh, you get more exercise in Italy. Not true. COVID took my legs out 4 years ago. I live a quarter mile off the road. I'm often carrying 40 to 50 pounds in or out. I work out in the gym 3 times a week with people that are a generation or two younger than I am. I do not excel, but I'm at it. I'm the only white-haired guy in the gym in 20 years doing what I'm doing. The difference is the food. And there's something I am allergic to Alaska, and I live like a poor vegetarian over here. In Peru, I eat bacon and eggs every morning. Who cares? And that's true. I don't eat as much gelato as I would like to. But the effect is dramatic. Granted, guys are the weakest, I got that. And like the Ali classes, average age is 70, and I'm older than that. The men have all, they're home watching TV or they died or something like that. So it's like 70% women. And a lot of these people are jocks, so they're not gonna lift weights. Question is, the food makes the big difference. So part of what you're saying is, where can I get my gut fauna tested and find out, am I the glyphosate freak, or what is poisoning me in America? Without being too specific, I go to Italy, within a month I'm regular, healthy again. When I come home, ta-da, again. And I've done this more than 30 times. So let me point out the seed and.
Yeah, there's a lot of, so it's outside of the scope of this talk, but I think it's a really key thing that you're hinting on, because a lot of people will notice that. And a lot of it's processed stuff. And even if you're not eating a lot of processed stuff, there's a ton of sugar in nearly everything that wasn't made from sunshine or from something that really ate sunshine. So one of the things that I typically will find myself having conversations with patients pretty regularly, and myself too, if I, kind of go off on, and have, food that I know isn't necessarily as good for me as other stuff is. I like to kind of I coin this for patients like first order foods. So you either eat something that was made from sunshine directly, vegetable, plant, that kind of stuff, or you consume something that where there was no middleman. It was something that, salmon, fish, whatever, that ate, something that was grown on the planet. And I think that if you just did that simple thing and didn't and avoided things that were made through a factory and packaged, you'll find that that experience that you have in Italy and in Peru, to a large extent, can be replicated here also.
You got a list?
Yeah, it's all the stuff that doesn't have a label on it. So like when you go to the grocery store and you go and buy an apple, it might say Gala apple, but it doesn't say ingredients. Blah, 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 blah. Okay? It's like if I go buy a dozen eggs. Well, if you're going to buy a dozen eggs, do you want to buy something that was, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but you're going to pay for this stuff one way or the other. So you either, in my opinion, spend a little bit more and get something that's free range, and wasn't like where they fed this chicken in a little housed cage all this junk, and then you're going to eat the egg that was downstream of that stuff. So there is a lot of, I think there's quite a bit of toxin and a ton of sugar in our foodstuffs, and if you can avoid stuff that's processed, overall you're going to have a lot less inflammation, and your energy levels will go up, and you're going to start feeling better, and you'll lose some pounds, especially if you incorporate just a small little exercise, routine for 30 minutes a day as part of that. Yes, sir.
My question is about sauna. I'm not a sauna user, but I've seen people that come out of the sauna and they go right into a cold shower. And my question is, what does that do to your blood pressure?
Well, so I'm one of the guys that loves doing that. And I think that I haven't really checked my blood pressure on it, but basically when you're in that sauna, everything's vasodilated. So you're trying to shed off all this extra heat through sweating. And then when you go into a cold shower, or you go into an immersion tub, ice bath, that sort of thing, basically you're just clamping that stuff down very quickly. And a lot of that stuff's kind of theoretical, but basically talks about, so you have a higher nitric oxide release as part of that, and it exercises most likely your vascular endothelium. So we have collagen within our blood vessels, and our blood vessels are not just little static tubes. They can contract and they can dilate. So it exercises those. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, great lecture. Love to talk about the sauna. I appreciate the other two questions because I'm not a sauna but maybe I should be. So I appreciated the question about how long, because I go in there and I'm immediately like, I'm dying, I'm being cooked alive. So what's the goal, what's the frequency? You know, I know you asked the question already, like.
Yeah, so I think that, you
You
know,
said
when
an hour, and I was like, okay.
everybody's going to be a little bit different on that. Like if I had a sauna at home, I would use it probably 4 to 7 days a week, but I don't. So I try to go to the one that's over on base at their gym, and I like to do that twice a week. And if I miss it because I'm on call or, you know, life stuff happens, I really do miss it. For me, I think the thing that I notice the most about it is how well I sleep. After going through a few cycles like that, my sleep quality is appreciably different having used that. And I think it also, when I'm in there, I really push the fluids a lot, so I tend to kind of hyperhydrate while I'm going through that. But everybody has their own little regimen that they do, and I think the key thing is that it doesn't need to be a competition. It just needs to be, you know, if that's something that you want to start doing. I think that it has a lot of benefits, because when I'm in there, I'm just sitting there. Maybe I'm stretching my legs out or something like that, but my heart rate goes up really high when I'm in there for a prolonged amount of time. And then when I get out and I take a really cold shower or an ice plunge, you know, within a few minutes, it will lower back down, and then I'll cycle through it. So I tend to cycle through there 3 times, and that's something that I'll do at the end of a workout. And for me, it makes a really big difference. And most people that use sauna regularly have kind of found that same type of effect, that it helps them sleep a lot better, lower stress, and I think that it just I feel like it kind of helps my cognition a little bit better for concentration. And I think a big part of that is you're just pumping a lot of blood up into your brain. So when we look at you know, some causes of dementia, it's because people are static and they're not doing things to really pump an intense amount of blood, you know, into your cranium, other than what you're just, you know, getting from, you know, day-to-day living. So if you can really boost that, I think that that's where you're seeing at least a portion of the benefits that I explained to you. Yes?
So that's what you're saying then too, is that it's not just the one-time thing, it is the cycling piece that you do, as though you were doing repetitions in an exercise.
I think that you could get it if you just did one and you didn't want to spend more time on it. I really like it.
Yeah, for some people that have like outdoor saunas or whatever, they're not next to a shower. And so just going out in the cold is there.
Yeah, well, that would work too. I mean, when you look at a lot of the individuals that use these in Finland, for example, some of the individuals don't, you know, they're not by a lake or a stream where they can cut a hole in the ice and plunge in. They just go out and sit on a bench or whatever. And so they'll chill down pretty quickly, and I think that you get a lot of the same effect that we were kind of talking about with the shower, maybe even in spades. Did you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering about the sauna again. Is there a time of the day that's better? If you did it like in the evening, would it impede your ability to sleep, or should it be done in the morning? I'm just curious. I don't know anything about saunas.
Everybody may be a little bit different on that, but I think that, like, I do that in the evening, and if anything, it helps my sleep better. When I go home, I'm like, wow, I am so relaxed, and I just, you know, hydrate and, you know, do my bed routine, and I'm usually not stirring at all at night. I get up when the alarm goes off in the morning, unless I get up and use the restroom at one time during the night. So, yes, sir.
The sauna I've been going to with some friends is get in there and pour water on ourselves at times. And then in the winter time, it's pretty cool, we just go sit outside. And there's no tub of ice or
Right.
shower or anything. It's pretty.
Yeah, we're special up here. Mother Nature gives us plenty of cold, so I don't necessarily think it has to be some type of a submersion event. I think that it's what you're really looking at with all these different, like, people that are doing like these ice dips and cold showers. You're just looking at something that vasoconstricts.
Of course, we're also enhancing it with a beer.
You gotta be careful with that. Yes, ma'am.
Do these sauna studies talk about an optimal temperature range or a temperature where it's too high that it's no longer helpful?
So most sauna is like 165 to like 180, 185. That's where that's the range where most people are using it. So obviously if you had a sauna that was, 280 degrees, you wouldn't even go in there. That's an oven. So I think, 165 to probably 185 is the target that most of the manufacturers globally are trying to hit with the temperature when you go in there in Fahrenheit. Yes.
Question on the walking. I understand any 30 minutes of just walking is great. But how brisk ideally? What should you work up to? Heart rate? How quick? What would be goals?
It's a pretty interesting question that you ask, because there's so I like reading stuff about health and wellness. It's just something that I've always had an interest in. And there was an article that was in the BBC News that looked at walking speed, and it was a study that looked at walking speed and how that related to your telomere length, which is when your cells divide, and it looked at aging, because telomere length is related to aging. And so my recommendation is when you go out and walk, it's okay to have some strolls, but when you walk, turn it up a little bit. That's going to bring your heart rate up, and it's not going to, trash your joints unless you already got like end stage arthritis. And if you can't walk because you have a spinal condition or a arthritic condition or some other, health issue, that you really want to get that looked at, because it's an important part. But as far as like miles per hour or anything like that, do what you can. I mean, if the key thing is that you want this to be sustainable. And it doesn't have to be the same every single day either. There'll be some days where I really want to crank it when I'm walking to work. I don't live that far from the hospital, but it's probably, maybe 2/3 of a mile each way. And I do that rain or shine, minus 45, 85. It doesn't matter to me. I really like that walk. And for me, it loosens me up in the morning, and then it kind of unwinds me on the way home. And I don't always go the same speed on it. I think the key thing is that it's just something that I want to do every day. It's hitting it regularly, and maybe you want to modify it sometimes.
And of course, winters and in ice, which I think is the most dangerous issue we face staying in Fairbanks. Ice bugs, what else do you do just to prevent those falls?
So I can tell you the shoulder seasons are where I dislike it the most. When it's the heart of the winter, usually there's pretty good grip. But there's a lot of, I'll wear like cleats, or, I have a pair of those ice bugs that basically, will grip into the ice. And then if it's really, really slick, I may even, bring ski poles, trekking poles, little adjustable ski poles. Nothing wrong with that. So, and then, just being mindful with it too. The other thing is, like when it's really slick like that, you have to concentrate. And I know that that's good for you as well, because you don't want to slip. It's kind of unnerving if you're taking off and all of a sudden a leg slips out from underneath you and you end up with a twisted injury or hit your head, that kind of thing. So just got to be mindful of it. Use your ski poles, make sure you have proper footwear. in the wintertime, even if it's just snow and it's packed snow, I always wear, you know, a really good supportive lightweight hiker boot, and then I'll put the cleats over top of that, and that way, you know, I'm not like twisting an ankle underneath, or at least not regularly. Yes, ma'am.
In the time I've been sitting here, my watch has told me congratulations, that I walked more today than I did yesterday, and that so far twice this week I've walked more. It tells me things like how many minutes were spent brisk walks, so it kind of answered Mike's question on how do you differentiate between just strolling and walk the dog pace. And it's also told me to stand up, which I think would have been really rude. Your talk, but,
Yeah.
and then, although there are times it tells me congratulations for standing up, when in reality I'm going to get some chips. You know, data and information can tell us the right things and the wrong things sometimes, but I love that we have that kind of information and that kind of prompting. And wonder if you recommend that to people, that hey, if that's something that would help motivate you.
I think anything that helps motivate people to get up off the couch and have little micro challenges in your day. So here's a prime example. Get creative. Like, let's say you get up and you like chips. Well, it probably doesn't fare well if you're really trying to avoid, you know, like the processed stuff that we talked about, but, you know, we're human and we want to live. So let's say that you have those chips and you're like, I'm going to allow myself those on, you know, 1 or 2 nights a week or whatever. But if I'm going to do that, I'm going to, you know, jump up on my little pull-up bar and I'm going to do, you know, a couple of pull-ups, or I'm going to, you know, stretch for 5 minutes and then I can do that. So there's ways to kind of like incorporate that measure that you do, and you can still put a little twist on it, and to where you can negate some of that a little bit, and you're doing something active that's good for you in the meantime too. So, you know, I think being creative and challenging yourself, it doesn't have to be some great big challenge. It can just be something that's simple that you can stick with. And that's what I'd really encourage you to do. Those little things all count. They all add up and they all count, and they're worthwhile. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I may have a partial solution to that. 10 or 15 years ago in Otley, an instructor told me, I said, why can't I find out the ingredients online and compare whatever, apples? And he said, it's illegal. And they've been sued out of their minds for trying to do that. And then something come along called SIFT, which I still have on my iPhone, and you can zap it and tell you what's in it. But she's like, you know, she got bought out and retired, quote unquote. So now I use something called Yuka, Y-U-K-A. It's an app. It's free. I pay $15 anyway. And so I go through the store and I create do-it-to-your-own pantry. And a lot of things that I would normally buy, I don't anymore. I put things back on, so I take things off because this gives me the ingredients. Y-U-K-A. And what I want is an app that'll increase my telomere. Good luck. But the point I'm kind of going home, I understand what you're saying about exercise, and there's probably a few people in this room that exercise more than I do. In the last 3 months, trying not to die with all these people whose mothers are too young for me to date, I've gained 25 pounds. Exercising hard. And I know I became a little more old age. And then I go to Italy, and you couldn't get me out away from my computer with a crowbar. The weight falls away. Eating extra meals and the whole thing. The food is a big deal. And yeah, I live off of vegetables and nuts. But, and my Yuka won't tell me what's in the vegetables. I am the glyphosate person. There's something about the food here, and you know, physiologically, guys, yada yada. But I've done this so many times, I have a statistical perspective. And I guarantee you, if you go live in an Etruscan village for 2 months with your family and eat pasta every day, you'll lose weight. With or without a son.
Question related to the apps question. Stan Justice spoke a week or 2 ago. He was fabulous, long distance runner, mountaineer, legendary guy around here, trails. He talked about Strava as an app and kind of a buddy system all over the world, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you, any thoughts or recommendations on apps to
Yeah.
help motivate you?
Yeah, so I think that if you like that kind of stuff, then there's so many that are out there, and I personally don't use them. So I have some friends. We got together down in Sonoma County, some old SEAL team buddies and myself, and we. I think we're actually going to do that every single year because it had been years since we'd seen each other, but it was a very activity-filled weekend because you have these guys that are used to, competing and doing all these things pretty hard. So we did a lot of activity, and one of the guys that I was down there with, Tom, he is just in amazing shape, and he's really into all of these, teched in, checking all this stuff. But, that worked for him. For a lot of people, they don't necessarily need to have that. So, there's, the point in all this stuff is that there's not, the recipe that might work for you and me and you and you and you, it's going to be different. It's going to be different. And find what works for you and then, plug and play. Because I think the key thing is, eating right is really important. And I agree with you. I think that our food system in this country is pretty messed up. We have a lot of detrimental health events that occur because of our messed up, diet system. So it's not just exercise. What you put in does matter. But that being said, it's probably okay realistically to find that, that nice little balance that you want too. There was this guy down in California that's like a retired CEO for this company, and he's trying to biohack his system to where he's aging slower than his trips around the sun. And I look at his life, and I wouldn't trade that for having something that's a little bit more moderate, like I have. So if I want to have a big, delicious steak and a glass of wine, and maybe even some frites with that, well, I can do that, but I can't be doing that every single day because additively, that's not going to work for me. So I think portion size is important. I think, the dietary stuff and really being cognizant. A lot of times people don't recognize how much that we tend to snack. So one of the things that I'll oftentimes have patients do is just carry like a little flip notebook, one of those little waterproof notebooks, and everything, including water, for a month. Just write every single thing that goes through your lips. Drank an 8-ounce glass of water, had another one, had a little, cup and a half of, raw nuts here, had this, that. And then people, a lot of times what will happen is individuals will realize, wow, okay, for those things that really it wasn't really a meal, it didn't really add up to a whole lot. Well, let's look at the calorie expenditure of that, knowing that it's not just strictly calories, but that is the fuel. So that's energy, and if I'm putting extra energy in that I'm not burning, well, that's going to end up as adipose. So, or muscle, potentially, if you're exercising and you're putting that extra calorie in that way. So you just have to be, I think, being really mindful of how much you're taking in is probably a really good first step in addition to the other things that we talked about, and avoiding all the processed stuff. And that's, you could do that on an app, or you could do that with a little notebook. It just depends on how much you want to be tied to your phone. I'm trying to get off this thing more. I use it for work and stuff like that, and I read a lot of articles on there, but I don't want my life to center around, my smartphone. I'd rather work on my machinery upstairs to be really in touch with who I am, and if I'm gaining weight, if I need to do more stretching, if I need to spend that extra 30 minutes, stretching out a body part when I'm waiting because the flight's delayed. Out walking in the cold. Walking in the cold will burn a lot of calories. So there's all sorts of different strategies that you can utilize to do that, and it's just a matter of getting out there, finding your play and doing it.
I have a question. There's a lot of us that walk at the Dipper during the day, and I don't see hardly anybody doing any warm-up before we start. I mean, you see them put their coat down and they just start walking like that. I know I should be doing a warm-up. I mean, because that's what they say. I don't see anybody doing it. Is that really necessary?
So what are you
If so-
suggesting? A warm-up walk before you walk?
Well, that's what I think of it. If you start out slow,
Yeah.
and then kind of, then, and I figure that's a warm-up.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm not doing what I should be doing, that there should be I should be doing something ahead.
I think that unless there's some area that, let's say for example, you have a really tight Achilles tendon or something like that, and you're on borderline tendonitis, well, maybe you want to warm that up a little bit, but a lot of times walking, you could just walk slower and then build up to
That's what
a
we
thing, and I think
see.
that would be fine, if you feel like you need that. Some people might not need that
Right.
for walking if they come from a really, really, more of a high intensity background where, they feel like, well, when I walk, that is my warm up.
And then usually the last lap, we'll just go a little bit slower, calling that our cool down. Because it just feels like that's the right way to do the walking. The only thing I'm not sure about too is I will walk more. I like sports, so I have certain podcasts I really like. So my reward when I walk is I get to listen to that daily podcast. But then when you listen to athletes talk, they say, well, you're supposed to not do music and distractions. You're supposed to focus on the walking, the mind-body connection. But I'll walk a lot more if I've got a podcast I can listen to.
So
But
that's
am
what I was
losing my
saying.
workout?
Everybody's different. So
Okay.
like, some athlete, saying that you have to do it this way, that's all nonsense.
Okay.
Do what works for you. The key thing is that you're out there doing it. And you're doing it, so if you're listening to a podcast and that makes you want to do that regularly, and you start doing that regularly and you start feeling better and all these things are happening that we talked about, and it's fun. Yeah, exactly. If it's fun, do you think that you'll be more likely to do that again
Well,
tomorrow?
I know I am, because if I don't do the podcast, if I don't walk that day, I go, can't listen to the podcast because that's part of, so I kind of trick myself into, so it becomes like a reward.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like getting up and having a chip. So is that in and of itself isn't a horrible thing, but maybe there's a way that you turn that, occasionally doing that, into something that is even beneficial, where it far outweighs the half a cup of chips or whatever you have. So
Thank you.
yes, sir.
One more thing, if you want to walk and push yourself a little, get on the sledding hill and walk up and down that over 4 times.
Oh, for certain. I can, there's, one of the things, so last year I gave a talk, and it was a talk about basically achieving victory in orthopedic and spinal surgery. A big part of, my practice, and it's always been this way, is I'm trying to get patients to go into surgery in the most optimal health that they can achieve as an individual. And that's different from me, Dr. Keller, you. Everybody has a little different, baseline and has, things that are going on. So it's not a rubber stamp, one size fits all. But, if we go into procedures and surgeries and we have this thing called reserve, so I don't want to take someone and do a big spinal reconstruction on them if they if I know that, the stress of that surgery is gonna basically push them on the wrong side of the fence, where they're having a hard time even getting up out of bed, that's a complication machine, guaranteed. What I'd rather do is talk about some strategies. Maybe they have a really hard time walking, but so I would say, okay, so it's hard for you to walk for distance because your leg gets wobbly and numb and weak and feels unstable. Well, maybe it would be better if you, walked upstairs, because when you're walking upstairs, you're leaning forward and that kind of opens up your spine a little bit. Maybe you have a handrail, so I'm getting more heart, rate influence by walking upstairs, and then you go and take the elevator down, or maybe take a ramp down and you do cycles that way. So there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of, hack our systems to a certain extent to get ready for some of these procedures without having to go off and, train for a marathon, so to speak. It's little things that make a difference, so that if we're going to do an intervention, the likelihood of us being able to get up and get moving after the surgery remain really, really high, because we have enough fuel in our tank to get through that. Anybody else? Okay, well, thanks very much. I really appreciate I really appreciate all the dialogue. I don't have all the answers for all of these things, and you as individuals won't have all the answers either. I think the key thing is, get out there, get dirty, skin your knees, play, find your play. That's the best advice that I could give you. Everybody has different things that they like, whether it's walking with a podcast, whether it's touring all over Europe and eating every single last morsel of pasta known to man so you can lose weight, whatever it happens to be. But find something that's really enjoyable, that is healthy, and just engage in that a little bit every day, because it will pay off. It may seem like nothing, but the evidence basically attests that it's anything but that. It's all very important stuff, and it's really key to all of us aging and living healthy as we put more laps around the sun. So thank you.